Travis Mangoodsell. Should have worn my, man. I delayed the updates on my computer just in case Windows was going to sabotage my computer again. I was going to wait until after the election, expecting Trump to issue martial law as he promised, a civil war as he promised, and so far nothing. But now Windows is telling me we got the dreaded update for you. Update or lose your computer access. Alright, so anyway, despite not having the sweater top to wear for my run this morning, and only getting one lap in as a result of the wind chill, I had a dream that I woke up to, and the number in the dream reminded me of a certain upcoming date, which a certain federal judge who thinks she's protecting the church may end up destroying the church. Wouldn't that be nice? So we'll see. We still got a few weeks. But the dream, I'm a-leaving on a jet plane, don't know when I'll be back again, leaving. Armageddon, from John Denver, who died on a jet plane. Very tragic. And used in the movie, come on. It's bugging me now. Final Destination, with the theme song from 9 Inch Nails from The Muppet Show. So, the dream. I had received a ticket for a plane. I could not read where I was going. I just saw the ticket, and the date was the 9th. Didn't tell me the month or the year. It just said 29 that I remember in the dream. And so I'm at the airport, and there are different lines for different flights. My particular flight was the one that was immediately boarding, whereas everybody else had to wait in line. And so there were people running down the terminal to get on board the plane, and so I myself got through and into the terminal to get to the plane. And on board the plane, it was very wide. I don't think it was actually a plane. But yeah, the stewardesses were there to assist me with boarding processes, and I remember needing to go to the bathroom, which of course I did need to go to the bathroom because I'm about to wake up. And so yeah, that number 29 stuck in my head, and I'm not sure when that happens if the number 29 is a countdown for 29 days from today, which is the 28th, which would let's see, be 37. So 30 is the 8th of December. So the 15th of December. That's after the new moon. It's during Hanukkah. Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's the 5th dark day of Hanukkah. Ooh. Of course, you all remember from watching my videos the 15th or the 5th day of Hanukkah back in 2017 was the fulfillment of Revelation chapter 12, sign of the dragon. And then soon thereafter was the sign of the tail of the dragon with the stars falling from it, which just happened to correspond with a certain death of a certain CEO of a certain corporation posing as a religion. But if it's not 29 days from now, which is on the 5th dark day of Hanukkah, it may be the 29th of November. And so what do my wondering eyes do appear? But Advent, the first day of the year. Advent is a Christian holiday. And, of course, I refer to Wikipedia on this, hoping that those who put the information on here are Christian and therefore know what they're talking about. Advent is a season of liturgical year observed in many Christian churches as a time of expectant waiting and preparation for both the celebration of the Nativity of Jesus at Christmas and, drumroll, the return of Jesus at the second coming. And so, yeah, there's a 40-day fast, whereas Mormons suffer enough as it is with a one-day fast for fast Sundays. And, yeah, the 40-day fast has to do with Jesus and the gospel narratives confronting Lucifer as Lucifer tempts him with Psalms, and Jesus responds with Torah, Deuteronomy specifically, to show that the Torah is more valuable than the Psalms, even though the Psalms were written by King David, as was traditionally understood. And so that was right before his ministry. So, is it a Russian Orthodox thing too? Does Russia know the date? I don't see it. I see Eastern Christianity, but that's not necessarily Russian Orthodox. So I see Roman Rite, Western Rite, Eastern Christianity, but Eastern Orthodoxy. So, alrighty. Anyway, it means from the Latin adventus, meaning coming or arrival, and so they call it the second coming because the gospel authors really screwed up royally the documents. But nonetheless, it still has been preserved, as much as it is a stumbling block for Christians and Mormons, as Jews don't recognize it because it does not conform with their Christ, the coming of their Christ, the arrival of their Christ, the advent of their Christ. And yet there is no date for the Jewish advent, which is interesting. They know of Passover for Elijah, but they don't quite know Moses. Joseph Smith Jr., did have the advent on Passover of Elijah and Moses giving him keys, which keys was not to be used as the advent was not back then, was in the future, as the Book of Mormon gives us the date for the sign of the Son of Man, as I've been going over with you. And so the 29th also is right before the full moon, and I forgot to check. Because now, if I bring up the Stellarium program and I exit out, it will exit out of the video recorder. So I can't do both at the same time. I think if I get into it, it deletes the recorder. And so, yes. Oh, interesting. Everybody thinks this is a pagan practice, which it is because it's Egyptian. The erecting of a Christmas tree, which is the Dej pillar of the cedar of Lebanon, of Babel, of which Osiris, in his dead casket, drifted ashore, and thus the cedar of Lebanon grew to engulf it. And so the king of Babel freed Osiris's coffin and body to the servants of Isis, his wife, as they returned his body back to Egypt. Second coming. And erected a Dej pillar, carving the cedar into a Dej pillar, thus the sign of Osiris, with his ascension, typically. But with his return to Egypt and resurrection from the dead, Set found out he was alive again and back in Egypt. And so this time Set had him slice and diced into 14 pieces. Others try to change the story's meaning by talking about the different districts in Egypt. But this is where we get the scattering of the house of Israel, the 14 tribes. 12 sons. Joseph, as the birthright blessing son, gets a double portion, so Ephraim and Manasseh, thus 13. And then there's a missing piece when Isis's servants again do missionary work to gather in the elect that have been scattered by Set, King Satan, King Set, and tossed his body into the Nile River and then spread throughout all the world, scattered. And so thus the sacrament in Mormon Church, communion sacrament for Catholics, and the bread referring to harvest of the wheat, and represents the body, the broken body. So thus not the Jesus of the Gospels, of Jesus Christ, Osiris. And the wine, which typically can be water, but is best symbolized with red wine. For the blood spilt with the murder of Set, who kept his throne. And then once they gathered all the pieces, brought them back to Egypt, Isis used her priesthood powers, yes, her priesthood powers, Romans 16 when translated correctly. And assembled the 13 pieces of his body together. And yes, there's a missing piece, which she then needed to fashion. Dinah did not get restored. If you can't catch on, think sexually. And so she fashioned this missing piece of Osiris's body, and then hovered over him as an eagle. Other texts say she just has sex, rather than an immaculate conception. And she's pregnant with Horus, who is to take over for Osiris, as Osiris now finally ascends into heaven to be the king of heaven, and has the temple rituals all set up for mankind, specifically his son Horus, to be anointed the succeeding king. But because he's in the womb, Set finds out, King Satan, King Set, finds out and wants to kill the woman and the baby. Revelation chapter 12. And so they flee into the wilderness. Matthew sort of tries to justify his existence for his story version by saying that the baby Jesus, Talladega Nights, the prayer for baby Jesus, the prayer to baby Jesus, has to then go into Egypt, flee from Herod, rather than Set. And so, yeah, he sort of screwed things up, but, you know, he tried very hard, even though he's caused many Christians to stumble. And so, while in the wilderness, he is born. He is, again, his mother, having priesthood authority, is able to initiate him in the temple rituals of his father, washing and anointing. And then Set, not Set, it's David. I can't think of his Egyptian thought. Thought. Then teaches Horus about his original kingdom of David. Remember, Jesus is supposed to be the restorer of the kingdom of David, but sort of fails during the Roman period, as there is no sign of his coming during the Roman period anyway. We just had that on 23rd September 2017. You know, the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah, king of America, on the throne of America, put on there by Babylon, Russia. And the year when the first of the 3 days of darkness occurred over Regis, the king star, total solar eclipse of the heart. And Nikki French's version is a little more exciting, but nonetheless both are excellent. And so yes, the actual sign of his coming on the white horse, as I've gone over with you, is on the 8th of April 2024, the third day of darkness. And so it's interesting that the fifth day of darkness also is 29 days. And so it could be both. But again, Hanukkah is for the restoration of the temple and the lighting of the menorah which lasted for the 8 days, as they took it back, the Maccabees, which in 2 Maccabees 16 has the name Nephi, which explains why President Kimball refused to allow the Apocrypha, with my favorite story from Scripture, the story of Bel. Everybody says it's Bel and the dragon. No, they're two separate stories. But yeah, Kimball refused to put the Apocrypha in our 1979 version of the Bible. And then Benson comes out with a First Presidency statement on why we use the King James Version, and says that's the one that Joseph Smith used, as to explain why we aren't translating it correctly, even though these CEOs of a certain front for a religion claim to be translators without publicly announcing they are translators, as they sort of skip that one when we all give blood oath loyalty to the leaders of the church. And so, yeah, I can't believe he botched Israel. Of all times to botch Israel. The meaning of it. At a time when Mormons are looking for Israel's coming. And he botches it. Oh dear God. Israel, if you haven't been paying attention, is Yah, Prince of God. And so, yes, I'll be doing an Ezekiel 37 video where Joseph Smith believes it's him who is the Yah, Prince of Israel, or Prince of God, but sort of gets murdered like Osiris, and so he has it set up for a future Mormon to take over in his stead. And so even though Nephi, son of Nephi, is the one who becomes the Yah, Prince of God in the Book of Mormon, and Second Nephi has Lehi talking to his son Joseph about Joseph of Egypt, who, by the way, is the one who helped save Egypt during their drought by having storehouses, and yet the church closed their storehouses during the coronavirus. And then they opened them back up when they opened up the businesses and the church and all that stuff. But they're limited on what they give, though they complain that, oh, we're giving more from our storehouses now. But they're not giving up of their trillions. But Israel was the new name for Jacob, which is the name for the king of the Nephites, who overthrows the government and causes the tribes to be ununited states. But they were all united in their hatred of King Jacob and voted him out. And so we're expecting King Jacob to flee now, according to Joseph, or the Book of Mormon, I mean. Because it's a real history, right, Mormons? Certainly couldn't be a coded message warning us of what was going to happen in the future by the Illuminati, of whom Jacob, brethren adieu, is trying to leave his final thoughts and prayers. TP. I found that YouTube video. They don't mention TP, but you get it when you see TP as their slogan. But yeah, all of these things all fit in together, guys. So yeah, we'll see. So yeah, I'm going to do an Ezekiel 37. I'm likely not to speak in that one. I'm just likely to show you the book of Joseph and then do a text of the book of Judah that goes with it. Because the current church, because they don't have translation powers, have then assumed that the Book of Mormon, because it plagiarizes Isaiah, not the Gospel, or not, the Gospels and the Genesis, Genesis specifically, the Torah. Because if you look at the brass plates, well, even brass plates, which I'll go over in the video, covers the genealogy of Joseph and the book of Judah, and Mormons don't see that it's the Ezekiel prophecy because it's brass plates. It's not scrolls, it's not sticks, it's not papyri of it's not the papyri that I can't see, if you can see. I hope you can see. It's not the papyri that Joseph Smith specifically labeled Joseph, the stick of Joseph, as he demonstrated how the revision and the fulfillment of Ezekiel 37 was to be done with what he did accomplish with the book of Abraham. Just didn't get around to Joseph. But we can see that he had planned it, that Abraham is correcting or adding to, correcting and adding to the Abraham account, and sort of giving the clue to the Genesis revision. But, I know how to do it, because, again, I'm the decipherer of Egyptian petroglyphs. That's why the church really is upset with me and has gotten the judges to censor me, as they're not allowing me to file, and they're not putting anything on the docket that I did file. And so, yeah, my last brief is not on the docket. But a certain date, it's coming up. And we'll see what happens. Because she's got to make a decision by then. Because the church council, defense council, they're running out of time. And I think they're thinking that they can keep their original filing, even though it was for the one that is no longer valid. So by not deciding on mine, she is hurting the church. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And so I'm also going to do maybe a video about Mormons being bad from the examples in the bad examples in the Book of Mormon, rather than adopting the good examples in the Book of Mormon. I don't know. There's so much I want to do today and got to get done, and I'm not getting to as I'm doing this video, and it's probably an hour long already. But Ambrosian, right? Ooh. Mozarabic. Huh. It's a different day. Alrighty. So, I'm gonna have to give in and update my computer before I do anything, because it's gonna give me grief on trying to load it. So, I'm only 30 minutes.